Oh, okay.
Oh,
Les Dennis, I think, is in Panto at the moment.
Is he really?
Yes.
Southampton?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's Les Dennis. Yes, I think it's Les Dennis.
The things you learn. So, good evening. My name is Gavin Payne. I am a consultant for Coeo, who are a SQL Server Microsoft Gold partner in the UK and Europe. We deal with complex mission-critical SQL Server environments, Engine, BI. I've worked with some of you guys in the room, and we are probably a face and a name that you'll recognise from SQL Bits and other events. So that's who we are, that's who I am. My background myself, I'm a database engine consultant, senior consultant for Coeo, and I'm also our virtualization specialist within the company. Hence, I do quite a few presentations, training, workshops for clients on this topic. So I guess my first question for everyone here tonight is, what's the balance between BI, dev, operations? So who here works with BI? Developers? Okay, and operational? Okay, so we've got a mix. So I'm quite conscious that when I've done training sessions and SQL conferences sessions before, people have chosen to go to a session about virtualization for an hour. You as BI or dev people probably don't want to go and voluntarily listen to the depth that you made at SQL Bits. So I'll try and keep a good balance of interest and fact and detail for everyone. So if you do get sort of frustrated that I didn't mention something, please feel free to ask me at the end.
Are you doing a training course soon?
Am I?
Doing a training course for devs soon?
That's gone.
Oh, it's gone, sorry.
So really, I guess we'll start off today looking at virtualization today. And really, I want to sort of understand what people's experiences are and what you use it for. So I guess my first question for you is, really broad range of people in the room. Who here uses virtualization at some point today? And that's really sort of interesting, given that we've not just got operational people, we've got BI, we've got devs. I guess one question we could ask is, do we include cloud computing? So virtualization is really the foundation for all the cloud computing technologies and providers that we see out there. So if you use something like Windows Azure or AWS, you are probably transparently using virtualization, even if you're not aware of it. So the two technologies do really go hand in hand. Virtualization is really a cloud computing enabler when you look at the technology stack. So for those of you that use it, what advantages does it give you? What disadvantages do you get? What are kinds of, what really excites you to use it? What really, do you hate to use to have it?
I've had some issues on slightly higher end systems with
Okay.
I/O compute sort of operations.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of that disappears when you go back to sort of bare metal. But
Okay. So I guess
we're just using it wrong for the wrong workload.
Yeah, so to summarise there, we've got to right-size the virtualization configuration for the workload. That's something we mentioned. Anyone else? Anyone got anything exciting that the reason why they really love using virtualization?
Just ease of provisioning.
Yeah. So ease of provisioning. If you're a virtualization administrator, rather than having to buy a physical server and put it in the rack, you can self-deploy VM in a couple of minutes. So good point.
And you can have your own internal networks and Active Directory and all sorts.
Yeah. So I guess as we'll see in a bit, we can use virtualization to provision complete mini environments for developers. So you could give every developer their own 6-server test environment, which we just wouldn't be able to consider sort of 3 or 4 years ago.
So, on the disadvantages, I don't know if you get this, but the deal with people virtualisation probably sounds really stupid. You get some people who lose sight of the fact that it's actually physical hardware that has to underpin all this.
Yes.
I've worked at places that have had terabytes and terabytes of virtualised infrastructure, and they say, well, I'll just card you a virtualised disk as the system, and you think that's nice. I know, if there's like a storage array or a HP EDA, and I can't go down to the physical disk level, but it'd be nice at the very least to sort of say, I've 10 dB off this law.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something we'll look at. So even when we virtualise, especially in the SQL Server world, SQL Server still has its operating practices that if you meet, will allow it to excel, and that's something that we'll cover today. So I guess the final question there, sort of collectively, or what would we do without virtualization? I think as we've mentioned, we would actually have dozens more physical servers than we have today. We'd have old servers, a little bit risky. So I guess what it's allowing us to do is that whole range of quickly deploy in bulk, and also manage things more easily, which we'll mention. So, why do we virtualize? The red doesn't really show out here, so you'll just have to imagine a nice dark red banner there. The primary reason that most people will say when they say, well, what's the point of virtualization, is probably the original adoption reason. It's not the only, and today it's probably not the most important. So people originally adopted virtualization to reduce cost and reduce risk. And we'll cover how that works in a moment. But really the idea was that I could deploy fewer physical servers than I'm used to. They're a bit more powerful, so there is a trade-off that we have to remember there. We might deploy fewer physical servers, but those physical servers need to be more powerful to still give us the capabilities we need. So we can deploy fewer servers, which is really a goal for the guy that likes to count servers in the data center and keep that number as small as possible. We can also run our older workloads on newer and safer hardware. So we can take virtualized snapshots of old physical servers and run them as new virtual servers on newer hardware. So if we had a 10-year-old server that was running an old finance system, that 10-year-old server, we can take out a picture, but we don't have to change anything about the finance system. So that's something that we often overlook, is that it's a risk reduction as well as a cost reduction. And I think, as we mentioned earlier as well, we can reduce our deployment times. So if we do have a really dynamic dev environment, test systems, I want a server up for a day, I need a new test environment for a week, we can do that, we can provision that in minutes, not days. But I guess also what we need to reflect on is that when we start to look at the bigger environments, those reasons are totally ignored. There are other benefits around virtualization that we see people considering now, around increased functionality. That is the reason that they adopt virtualization. And this is really about the idea about being able to provision quickly, about being able to take snapshots and clones of virtual machines, and also virtualization, I won't mention it this evening, but it allows you to do some tricks around increasing the availability of virtual servers. So you might have a standalone SQL server that's not clustered, it's not running editions that can be clustered, it might be running really, really old editions that never even had clustering available to them. If there were a version that you might still be running that could do that. However, by using virtualization itself can offer you some high availability tricks that means that actually I can increase that availability of that virtual server without anything that runs on that virtual server ever knowing or needing to be reconfigured or needing to be compatible. So I guess for those older workloads that might have been running on riskier old single bits of tin, we can now run them on virtual machines that have a bit more protection. So really to follow sort of the same trend, the story that most people will see about when we virtualize is about getting a really high bang for buck. So that's saying, if I buy this physical server, I want to get as many workloads running concurrently on that physical server as I can. I want every resource maxed out. Virtualization for the CIO, the CFO, is a really great way of getting every server to work at 100% flat out all of the time and getting their money's worth. And that's great if you are in a small production environment or you're in a non-production environment. So if you're in a development team, you might have a test server and everybody moans that it's slow when everybody starts their virtual machines and does things at once. It might be slow for your test environment, but you're not in a production environment that is SLA sensitive perhaps. And that's fine. So what that means is that, previously you may never have been able to afford that number of test servers, but now you can, because you can virtualize using a single piece of hardware, but that single piece of hardware runs flat out, and it may be some of the time you ask it to do more than it's capable of doing. And that's fine, because that's really allowing you to provision previously unaffordable systems. So you've got to see that capability as being a positive rather than something that you never used to have. Oh, but we have it now and it's slow. So that's really sort of one step forward to sort of non-production environments. And again, as we mentioned there, when we're looking at this level of deployment, this style of deployment, we were really looking to maximize resource utilization. And virtualization actually brings some features, some technologies to the table that allow you to really exploit every bit of hardware and server. Question?
I was going to say, having a test system on fast hardware
Yes.
can actually lull you into a false sense of security. In many respects,
Yeah.
it's better to have it running on something that's a bit slower.
Okay.
So you can then be much better off, much better able to see where the resource bottlenecks are. And it's, so if you can get it running decently on a virtual machine, when you put it into the real thing, it'll fly.
Yeah, and I think what we can also do is we can also set the expectation with developers that this is not production grade hardware. So it will run slowly. The reason it runs slowly is because we're able to give you this in the first place. And yeah, you're quite right. If it runs great in test, it will run fine in production. So that's really that high bang for buck direction. The other sort of the opposite end of that scale is really moving towards high stability per buck. And this is where we start to see the trend of the behaviour around enterprise grade production systems. So all of the technology that virtualization brings to the table to allow us to really maximize our resource utilization, to over-provision resources, to make them really, really work hard. Enterprise production environments, they switch all that off. They don't want anything that can really put any risk towards the performance, the stability, the certainty around that performance level anywhere near them. So they say to VMware, it's great, you've got this feature, but we're not going to use it. Ironically, VMware also in their best practice documentation for SQL Server, they will also tell you not to use some of the great features that they put in their software to maximise your hardware. What they do want though is some of the management, some of the functionality around provisioning systems and EHA. That's the real goal for those enterprise production environments. The fact that actually it brings new technology around maintaining and delivering an environment rather than actually delivering the same environment but a bit more cost effectively. So two quite different ends of the spectrum when it comes to how we can use virtualization. If you're very, very much used to the high bang for buck end of things where your virtual server is always running flat out, you need to consider that actually when you move to production it doesn't always have to be like that. So some companies will choose not to allow that situation to ever happen. But what they do is to be able to do things around the management provisioning that they could never do in the physical world. So does anyone have any experience of, I guess, either of those, or do you sit in the middle? What's people's sort of feeling there?
See people deploy our software onto virtualized environments. We say yes, we support it, and it can run in a virtualized environment, and really completely when life just gets sucked out of the system. So they've not provisioned it correctly.
Yeah. So both of these, I could say your software's running on a virtual server. It could run really, really badly on this end. It could run really amazingly at this end. But I could still use the tagline, it's running on a virtual server, and that's where it becomes really difficult.
Previous place that I went there, it was VMware 4, and I had high availability and load balancing across three systems. And at one point it ended up with 90% of the VMs running on just one machines because they weren't really compatible the two together, which is exactly what you're saying now.
Yeah, so I guess what this is saying is that we've probably only ever heard this media story around virtualization being a cost saver, being a really great enabler to really maximise server usage, as we'll see in a minute. But there is another end to the story, and this is the end that the enterprise is adopting for their production environments today. So when we talk about getting, the most bang for buck out of our hardware, this is really focusing around contention. So this is saying, I've got a load of workloads that all want to use the same bit of resource. They all think they've got complete access to the resource, but I know that they will never need to use the full amount of that resource at any one time altogether. So I can probably do enough clever time slicing to make them all think they've got the full resource, but they'll all happily coexist. So I use the terms good and bad contention. Good contention is what virtualization was designed to allow. Bad contention is when you implement it badly, and that's why you get issues with performance. So if you look at the task manager screenshot on the far right of your screen, you'll see CPU usage, which might be a really typical example today of an application server, a domain controller, a file server. There are probably dozens of servers out there in your estate today that have an average CPU utilization of less than 15%.